What would you do if you built a machine that could bend time and then watched it make a screw vanish right in front of your eyes? This isn't science fiction. It isn't the plot of a movie. It's the true story of Mike "Madman" Markham, a young electrical engineer who may have built something the world wasn't ready for, a working time machine. But this story doesn't end with applause or a Nobel Prize. It ends with disappearance, mystery, and a truth so terrifying that even physicists can't explain what he saw when he came back. Because when Mike's machine finally worked, it didn't just send objects through time. It sent him, and what he brought back would haunt him and everyone who heard his story forever. Our story begins in St. Joseph, Missouri, in the early 1990s. Mike Markham was a bright but restless engineer. He wasn't rich or famous, just a guy obsessed with electricity, magnets, and the idea that maybe time wasn't as rigid as everyone thought. Friends said he could take apart anything, a radio, a computer, even an engine, and make it better. But Mike wasn't interested in fame or money. He wanted something far greater, to see beyond time itself. One summer night, while working in his garage surrounded by coils, wires, and humming transformers, Mike was experimenting with high-frequency magnetic fields. He'd read about Nikola Tesla's theories of vortex energy, a swirling electromagnetic field that could theoretically distort space-time. As the voltage climbed, blue arcs began to dance between two metal discs he'd set up. The air shimmered, static crackled, and then it happened. A small metal screw sitting on the table in front of him flickered and vanished. Gone. No explosion, no heat, no sound, just gone. When Mike cut the power, the screw didn't fall to the ground. It didn't reappear. It was simply erased. That was the moment his obsession began. Mike spent the next several weeks trying to figure out what had happened. At first, he thought it was a hallucination, or maybe a magnetic trick. But every time he repeated the experiment with enough power, objects within the electromagnetic field would vanish. He began keeping meticulous notes, sketches, voltage readings, timings. He called his creation the Time Vortex Generator. The device looked crude, two large discs facing each other like mirrors, connected to a modified transformer and controlled by an array of capacitors. When powered up, the air between them shimmered like heat rising off asphalt. Mike believed he had opened a micro wormhole, a temporary rift in time and space. He told friends that whatever passed through it didn't burn or explode. It was displaced. He didn't yet know where it went, only that it did go. Neighbors, meanwhile, began to notice strange things. Lights flickering, power surges, even a small blackout across several blocks. When police investigated, they found Mike's garage packed with high-voltage equipment. They warned him to stop before he burned down the city. Mike just smiled. "I'm close," he said. "Closer than anyone's ever been." By 1995, Mike had rebuilt the entire device, this time much larger. He'd scavenged industrial transformers from a junkyard and built new copper coils almost 6 feet in diameter. He believed that if he could produce enough energy, the vortex might grow large enough for a human to pass through. He began testing it on small living things, insects mostly. They would vanish for seconds, sometimes minutes, and then reappear, dazed but unharmed. To Mike, that was proof. He'd done it. He had bent time. He called his project the Time Jump. But as the experiments grew in scale, so did the danger. One night, he accidentally drew so much power from the local grid that it caused a massive outage. Transformers exploded across the street. That's when the police showed up again, this time with warrants. They confiscated everything. Every coil, every note, every piece of data. But Mike didn't stop. Within weeks, he'd built another machine. This one smaller, portable, but more refined. He had one goal left. He was going to step into it himself. It was August 11th, 1996. The last day anyone saw Mike Markham in St. Joseph. He told a few friends that night that he was about to make history. He promised he'd only be gone for a few minutes. Neighbors later reported hearing a strange humming sound coming from his garage, followed by a flash of blue light so bright it lit up the entire block. Then, silence. When police arrived, the garage was filled with smoke. The air smelled of ozone and melted copper. The machine was there, burned and warped. But Mike was gone. No signs of a struggle, no footprints, no blood. Just a faint circular scorch mark on the floor, and the lingering hum of energy that refused to fade. Mike Markham had vanished. He would not be seen again for almost 2 years. In early 1998, a homeless man was found wandering near a beach in Tampa, Florida, disoriented, barefoot, and sunburned. When police questioned him, he gave his name, Mike Markham. At first, they didn't believe him. He looked older, his beard scruffy, his eyes sunken. But when they ran his name through the database, they were stunned. Mike Markham had been missing since 1996. And yet, here he was, 1,200 miles away, wearing clothes that looked decades out of date. When asked where he'd been, Mike simply said, "I don't know." But it wasn't here. Soon after, Mike's story made headlines. He appeared on Art Bell's Coast to Coast AM, a late-night radio show known for UFOs, conspiracy theories, and time travel stories. Mike's calm, technical manner impressed everyone. He wasn't a raving lunatic. He was precise, scientific, even when describing the unbelievable. He explained that when he powered on the machine that night, the air around him shimmered like rippling water. He felt a pressure, a pull, as though his body was being stretched. Then, he said, everything turned white. He remembered falling through a tunnel of light, surrounded by flickering images, moments, memories, flashes of faces and cities. He couldn't tell if he was moving forward or backward. Only that time itself seemed to have no direction. Then, darkness. When he woke up, he was lying on a metal floor. Above him, strange lights pulsed, blue, white, and violet. He wasn't alone. Mike said there were figures standing around him, tall, luminous, almost transparent. They didn't speak, but he heard their voices inside his mind. They told him he had gone too far, that he had entered a realm outside of time, a place where the past, present, and future all coexist. He said they showed him visions, images of the earth in flames, of collapsing cities, and skies filled with metallic shapes. They said humanity had reached this point many times before, and every time it ended the same way. When he asked who they were, one of them replied, "We are what remains when time ends." Then they gave him a warning. Do not build it again. The machine works, but it should not exist. The next thing Mike remembered was falling again. The lights, the wind, the pressure, until he hit the ground in a field in Florida. When Mike returned, he was changed. He told friends that time wasn't what we think it is. Not a line, but a loop. Every moment, he said, is happening simultaneously. We just perceive it as linear because our minds can only handle one version at a time. We're living in a loop, he told Art Bell. Every time we destroy ourselves, the loop resets. Everything starts over. According to him, those beings, whatever they were, told him that humanity has already reached the end many times. Each time, we build technology that tampered with time or reality. And each time, we reset the loop to avoid total collapse. He said we're approaching that point again. The warning was clear. The next reset is close. After his radio interviews, Mike became increasingly paranoid. He told people that strange men were following him. He said his notes had been stolen, his blueprints copied, his motel room searched. He believed the government, or something else, had taken an interest in his work. Some nights he called friends, whispering that they were watching him. He said he'd seen black vans outside, that whenever he rebuilt part of the machine, the parts would disappear the next day. He also claimed his body wasn't the same anymore. He'd look in the mirror and see slight differences, scars that weren't his, small details that felt off. He wondered if the version of him that came back wasn't exactly the one that left. By 1999, Mike claimed he had rebuilt a smaller, more stable version of the machine. He told friends it could control the destination this time. He said he wasn't going to travel far, just to prove it still works. Then, once again, he vanished. His truck was found abandoned on a desert highway near Albuquerque, New Mexico. Inside were blueprints, tools, and a notebook filled with equations that even physicists struggled to understand. No one has seen Mike Markham since. So what happened to him? Was he a fraud, a genius, or the first human to truly break the laws of time? Over the years, 3 theories emerged. Theory 1, the hoax. Skeptics believe Mike fabricated the whole story for attention, but skeptics can't explain how he disappeared for nearly 2 years and reappeared hundreds of miles away, with documents, scars, and equipment that no one else could trace. Theory 2, government experiment. Some say Mike's invention caught the attention of secret research programs. They argue his disappearance was part of a classified time travel project, and that his visions were part of a controlled simulation. Theory 3, the real-time traveler. The most terrifying theory, that Mike succeeded, that his machine actually tore a hole in space-time, and he stepped through it. In 2003, a researcher uncovered a bizarre newspaper article from San Francisco, 1930. It described a man found dead in an alley, wearing unusual metallic clothing and holding a small copper device with gears and wires. Inside his pocket was an identification card that read, Michael Markham, St. Joseph, Missouri. No explanation, no records of who he was or how he got there. Could this have been the same Mike Markham? A man who vanished in 1996 and reappeared nearly 70 years earlier? If true, it would mean Mike didn't just travel through space. He traveled back in time. Years later, an anonymous source mailed a set of photocopied blueprints to a physics department at an Arizona university. They matched Mike's known handwriting and included diagrams of the vortex generator. At the bottom of one page was a note written in fading ink. Time isn't linear. It's a containment field. The more you push, the tighter it closes. When scientists analyzed the designs, they found that, if real, it could theoretically create a localized magnetic singularity, something that could bend space-time for a fraction of a second. But at the power levels Mike used, it would be incredibly dangerous. One researcher simply said, if he built this, it could work, but it might not let him come back. In 2012, long after Mike was presumed dead, a popular radio host claimed to have received a voicemail from an unknown number. It lasted only 9 seconds. The voice, distorted, older, said, "Don't build it again." The loop's already starting. Experts compared the voice to Mike's old coast-to-coast interviews. The match was almost perfect. Was it a prank? Or one final warning from the man who bent to time? If Mike was right, if time really is a loop, then maybe he didn't die. Maybe he's trapped somewhere between the folds of reality, repeating his own story over and over again. Maybe every time we rediscover his name, his machine, or his blueprints, we're replaying a moment that's already happened in countless versions of history. And maybe that's the terrifying truth he came back to tell us. That no matter how far we advance, we're destined to repeat ourselves, to build the same machines, to make the same mistakes, until the loop resets. So, who was Mike Markham really? A madman chasing the impossible? A genius who glimpsed the secrets of the universe? Or a warning from one timeline to the next about what happens when humans go too far? We may never know, because every record of him, every trace of his experiments has faded, as if history itself is trying to erase him. But somewhere, maybe in another time, another version of now, a man stands in a garage surrounded by humming coils, staring into a glowing blue light. He reaches out his hand and steps forward, and the loop begins again.